Have you ever had that weird feeling where you're absolutely positive you remember something a certain way? A line from a movie, a detail from history, only to find out that's not how it was? What if millions of people had that exact same false memory? Well, that phenomenon has a name, the Mandela effect, and it kind of makes you question our shared reality.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to put your memory to the test. Then we'll talk about what this whole thing is actually called. After that, we'll dive into some of the wildest examples from pop culture, history, and yeah, even geography. And finally, we'll try to figure out, what does it all mean?
All right, let's kick things off with a little test. And we're starting with probably one of the most famous scenes in movie history. You already know it, Star Wars. Come on, you know this scene. The big fight, the huge reveal. I want you to picture it right now and say the exact line that Darth Vader says to Luke. Got it in your head?
I'm willing to bet you remembered him saying, "Luke, I am your father." Pretty much everyone does, but that's not the line. If you go back and actually watch it, he never says Luke's name. The real line is just, "No, I am your father." Freaky, right? Let's try another one.
Okay, next up, Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. Picture it. He's got that giant .44 Magnum pointed at some bad guy. What is that legendary, iconic line he delivers in that moment?
Again, most of us remember a really short, punchy line. But the actual line is kind of rambling. He's asking himself the question first before he asks the punk. And yet, it's that simplified, incorrect version that is stuck into all of our heads.
So what on earth is happening here? I mean, when millions of people all misremember the exact same thing in the exact same way, it stops being just a simple mistake, right? Well, there's a name for this.
It's called the Mandela effect. The name itself comes from the first big example. Thousands and thousands of people distinctly remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison back in the 1980s. They remember seeing the news clips of his funeral. But in our reality, none of that happened. He was released in 1990 and passed away in 2013.
And this is where the theories get pretty wild. One of the main ideas out there is that these aren't false memories at all. Instead, what if we're seeing like residual memories? Echoes from a parallel universe that somehow bled over into ours.
Now, what's really amazing is how deep this stuff goes, especially in pop culture. It seems to be a total hotbed for these glitches in reality.
This happens constantly with brands and words we see every day. Just take a look. How do you spell the air freshener? So many people swear there's a second E in there. And the shoe brand? Doesn't it just look like it should have a T? But nope. The spellings on the right are the correct ones. It's always these little details that just feel wrong. Okay, this one might be the most famous example of them all. The beloved children's book series. Was it spelled with an E or an A? So many people will go to their graves swearing it was Berenstain with an E. But every single book ever printed says Berenstain. Think about the world's most famous Pokemon. Picture Pikachu's tail right now. Does it have a black tip on it? A whole lot of people remember that very specific black zigzag at the end. But if you look at the official art, it's never been there. The tip has always been yellow.
And this shows just how deep the rabbit hole can go. It's not just about one detail. In this classic painting, people have totally different memories. Some are certain there were 6 dogs, others say 7. Some remember cigars, others don't. People will vividly describe things like hats on the dogs or a grandfather clock, things that just aren't in the most famous version of the painting. And everyone is absolutely certain they're right.
So we're moving from pop culture into the actual pages of history. It seems like even the stuff we learned in school isn't safe from being collectively misremembered.
We all celebrate the 4th of July as the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. But if you look at the history, the actual vote for independence happened on July 2nd. And that famous document with all the signatures, most of the delegates didn't actually sign it until August 2nd, a month later. U.S. presidents are another huge source of this stuff. There are people who vividly remember being taught that Lincoln was the 24th president, not the 16th. Or how about this? Many people think only 2 presidents have been assassinated, Lincoln and JFK, but they forget about Garfield and McKinley. And the car JFK was in, many remember a simple 4-seat car, but the historical film clearly shows a big 6-seat limo.
So if rewriting history wasn't weird enough, the Mandela effect seems to be changing our maps. The very shape of the world some people remember is just different.
Take a look at a map of the U.S. East Coast. Now, does the name Delmarva ring a bell as a state? Because a surprising number of people are absolutely sure they were taught about the state of Delmarva in school.
And it's not the only one. There are whole lists of these so-called lost states, like Deseret or Platte State, that people have these vivid memories of learning about. They remember the capitals, where they were on the map, but in our current reality, these states never existed.
And the scale of this can get, well, astronomical. Some people have a fundamental disagreement about our solar system. They remember being taught that Mars was the third planet from the Sun and Earth was the fourth. It's a small change, but it's a massive shift in our place in the cosmos.
So, we get to the big question. What does all of this mean? Is it just our brains playing tricks on us, being reinforced by the internet, or is it something else entirely?
You know, the Mandela effect really sits at this wild intersection of human psychology, group thinking, and just how fast information and misinformation can spread today. It forces us to look at how our brains fill in the gaps and how we can all come to share memories of things that just plain never happened.
Which really brings us to the final and kind of unsettling question. When your own clear, vivid memory clashes with documented reality, what do you trust? And more importantly, what does it mean when it's not just you, but millions of people who share your exact same false memory?